You did talk about how your experience of kind of rising to new socioeconomic heights was not the same as some of your fellow compatriots, your friends who you grew up with.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the distinct paths that you guys kind of walked.
I love that you brought, and I've been doing a bunch of podcast interviews, and I've done some NPR type stuff, and I'll be doing more. And you're the first person to ask me about that. I talk about the issue of thriver's guilt, and I grew up in pre-gentrification, Clinton Hill, and it's wild looking back at that experience growing up, how so many of us went on divergent paths. There was a few of us that, we went the corporate route and we did well materially. Some of us became cops. I have a couple buddies that are detectives. I have a friend who's actually part of Mayor Eric Adams' security detail, and he refuses to tell me any stories because he has an NDA. I'm like, you're killing me here, man. I need the tea. But
Don't get him in trouble.
I know. But then on the flip side, man, then some of us went that street route. Will, I had a friend that I grew up with. He got busted for operating a really large drug ring. A couple years ago. He's now serving 30 years to life. And I used to run with these people. These were my peers. We talked about code switching, right? I'm a nerdy black kid, but I had to code switch even to fit in on the streets growing up. I had to put on another, I talked about the identity of corporate. I had to put on an identity to walk the streets where I grew up so that nobody would bother me. I had to know how to throw my hands, slap boxing. I had to dress a certain way. You had to have, that starter gear, and you had to have a JanSport book bag and the right sneakers, or you were going to get messed with. That experience and seeing the paths and seeing, just how close I could have come to going the other way. It's tough when you realize how fortunate you are. I came within a razor's edge of not even being here. I detail in that Thriver's Guilt chapter that 30 years ago, this year marks the 30th anniversary of, I almost lost my life. A random act of violence on a Brooklyn street. I almost bled out 30 years ago, 1995. I was 15 years old. And, to be where I'm at, I'm not the CEO of anything, but I've done okay. And, there's a level of exhaustion that comes too, because you had to hustle pretty hard to get out of those types of circumstances. I'm sure some of your students are probably dealing with things like that, and that's the unique aspect, I think, of the Black experience. When you're a young man and you're climbing that socioeconomic ladder.
Well said. Well said. All right. I'm a I'm gonna throw my first wrench. All right. So um yeah, I definitely remember reading about your experience, how everything went down, and you ended up getting that horrible knife wound. That you got lucky though, like that you didn't. It wasn't up or down, and you're still with us, thank goodness. And but it did make me think, and I want to get your opinion about this. One thing that has been coming up a lot as I've been having these intentional conversations on race is the reality that Black people can experience racism without their knowledge,
Mm.
right? Like, I don't know if you saw that story about the woman who had a baby, and then she went to go take the baby, and the baby's head came off, and it was found that uh, they had decapitated the baby, one of the nurses, and then they or the doctor, and tried to put it back on. And there's all kinds of different stories, frankly. There's all kinds of crazy things that go on. But ultimately, uh, I forget why I was bringing. Gosh, my mind. I'm sorry. I'm so tired. I've been teaching for a long time, but wait, I was going somewhere with that. There was a reason I told that story. My goodness, what was it?
It's a horrifying start to that story, man. A
Yeah,
baby
yeah.
dead. Oh my God.
I mean, I've got so many horrifying stories that I could tell that I've researched over the years.
But you were
Um,
talking about racism, and we sometimes we don't realize we're experiencing it.
Thank you so much. That's exactly right. And so I was thinking about that because, you were kind of rushed to the hospital, right? And then your care was in the hands of doctors, right? Doctors who could have made some kind of biased judgment about you. Doctors who
Yeah,
could have made a decision about your life or death in the heat of a moment based on, um, just their valuing how they value your life.
that's right.
It happens in the legal system as well. I've seen it as a lawyer who has, seen many criminal trials. You'll see the judge say that somebody reminds them of their cousin or their son or this, you could be my son, when they're doing a sentence. And then they sentence them leniently because of that relation that they feel to that person. And then, it could be same exact charges, same exact scenario, someone of a different race. In fact, one of the first people I ever talked to on the show is somebody who worked as both a defense attorney and a prosecutor in New York City. And he actually experienced that, like same case, same fact pattern, different people treated differently, by their boss,
Hmm.
mandated to be treated differently when questioned about it. So yeah, these things are real. They happen. They're enforced by individuals who are carrying out the status quo. And, that's part of the reason I do the work that I do is because I feel like a lot of people don't really know what the status quo is. Like a lot
Yeah.
of people don't know that they experience racism without their knowledge, that things have happened in their lives that were race based, that they maybe something triggered that they were like, oh, I don't really understand what's going on, or I might be a little confused, but it was, you just brush it off, you keep it moving. Why? Because of that mindset, right? Of, well, we've got to move on, right? That also, I think, damages our health and our psyches and contributes to our level of stress. And I think that it's something that's not really talked about because it's so nebulous, but it's so very important because um, one of the ways that the powerful maintain their power is by making sure that people can't exert a greater power or a power
Mm.
that can combat them. And one of the best ways of doing that is by making sure you're limiting people without their knowledge. And that has
Mm.
been uh, a consistent mechanism of white supremacist power in the history of the United States. That is like a way that they operate. So one of the reasons that I write about race as well on my Substack, check that out. Anybody who wants to see that, the Contraband Wagon Substack, is to talk about some of these mechanisms of white supremacy because they're weakening now. Even though it may seem
Mm.
like chaos, it may seem like we're rolling back in time, but that's not true. In fact, we're rolling forward in time. And so, frankly, obviously, we have to fight to make sure that we maintain the human dignity that we fought so hard for to crack that door open. We're not letting it close. All right. So we just got to accept that the powerful are going to try to close it and we're just not going to let them. And that's what our future is going to be. So that's why you're right here having this conversation with me right now, Justin.
That's right.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.